name is Garett Rogers. I am the CTO of Ready um, from Vancouver. Um, yeah, so I do a bunch of CTOE type stuff for Ready. I don't know if that's good enough or as a
Yeah, that's great.
well,
Uh, um, CTO is a wide range of things, of course. Um, I unfairly typecast you as the idea guy, but CTO is much more than that.
I prefer to do non CTO type things. Like I'm not really a CTO kind of guy. Just Ready kind of needs one for just for external purposes. Internally, though, I'm more of a technical, nerdy, geeky idea type guy, and that's what I mainly focus on day to day. So um, yeah, so CTO is not necessarily an accurate description or title for what I do. It's just more externally facing title.
Well, you've had your hand in a number of instances throughout the organization that where we sort of progressed what was possible or what we could do for our clients. I how do you consistently do that? Is this just all because you're, as you said, like a tech guy, or how are you finding these solutions?
I guess it just I don't know. I'm able to somehow see things that I feel like should be changed and or done better, and I'm not really a process guy. And a lot of times, the process of getting stuff done um, is overwhelming for people, and it is for me. So since I've been able, throughout the years to be able to kind of where it makes sense. Obviously, process is required for a lot of things, but where it makes sense, be able to put the process aside and just work hard and see something um, and be able to make something come to life without worrying about the process and figure out the process after is more about bootstrapping. I'm really good at. I like to say I'm really good at starting stuff. I think and a lot of times people don't necessarily want to start stuff just because of the process that's involved or like you got to get buy-in and whatever. For me, I feel like I'm not as worried about the process. I just like to get stuff done, and I'll figure that stuff out later. And then another big part of that is not being afraid to let go of something. So if what I'm doing wastes time, the worst case scenario is I learn something, and and there's no point of wasting more time on it if it ends up being something that's not needed or something that whatever feel like I'm not afraid of letting things go and just like uh, saying goodbye to something or handing it off to somebody else. It just I don't take like I take ownership in it in the sense that I really am really passionate about it and I start it up and I get it going, but I don't have that sense of I need to own this thing and it's my baby and whatever. Like anybody can take anything I do and run with it or tell me to stop doing it and I'll probably stop doing it unless I really feel strongly that something needs to get done and has to be seen through. You got to have that kind of drive to keep going where it makes sense. Um, I don't know, but yeah, I don't know if that totally answers your question, but as far as where I get the ideas, I think it's just like the ideas come to you when you're not really scared about doing them, and when you have an idea for the future, and you have the skills to do it, and you have the skills to do it, it's not hard to come up with ideas. It's just a lot of times I think, and it's not really a problem I have, but I do think a lot of people have really good ideas but don't share them or don't act on them because they're afraid of the consequences of those ideas. Just like as far as like, okay, you're starting something, you're going to have to get some buy-in, you're going to have to fit into this process, and you're going to have to do all this stuff. And there's all these things that people are scared about. And I think for me is I'm not scared of those things, and I kind of try and not worry about them, and I just do what I do well and just do it fast and good, and don't and then usually when you do that and you put all that stuff out of your mind, you can really you can get something going to a, you can get something pretty far and looking pretty good, and then an idea pretty well fleshed out before you even have to show it to anybody. um, but that only works when you're working fast and kind of on your own time. For me, like I always do that kind of stuff not during my normal work hours, because I like to do kind of these types of fun things in off hours. Like Ready was a good example of that, where I started Ready just as a side project at home outside of work. I took it to a really far, took it really far, and was about to get my first customer, and then approached Chris and said, "Hey, I got this thing," and he was like, "Wow, that's amazing." And so, but you can take it pretty far without having to worry about the process, is what I'm trying to get at.
I think I want to chase down on this creation of Ready a little bit more, but my original question, I think it still applies, is, well, IQ Metrics has done, as far as I can see, as long as I've been here, has done a really good job of knowing what your strengths are and benefiting from you in this sort of exploratory role. Uh, was it like that on day one, or did you have to build this brand for yourself? And I wonder, like, if Ready is an example of what you do, or if this is a new kind of approach where you're like come with something so defined as Ready.
Hmm.
When you started on day one, did they say, "Welcome, Garett, here's the process you have to
Well,
follow"?
so I'll tell you what happened on day one. So day one, I go in and they give me my first task, and it was, but 2000, year 2000, or sorry, yeah, 2000. And okay, jump.ca website needs a way for people to check their coverage. Uh, that was the perfect task for me back in 2000, because I was pretty naive and didn't really know what I was doing, but it really got my feet wet really quickly. But that was before Google Maps. That was before literally anything existed. Like Google didn't even exist back then, I don't think. I don't know when Google started, but anyway, it was like really early on. Like you had MapQuest, that kind of stuff. Uh, and so what I did was I went to the gas station and picked up some maps, and I went out to Future Shop, bought a scanner, and brought it to my desk, plugged in the scanner, scanned in these maps, loaded all the images into like Photoshop, like a pirated version of Photoshop, and like stitched them all together and drew like coverage areas and highlighted them with paint or Photoshop or whatever. So I had all these highlighted areas, and then I had different resolutions so you could like zoom in and out. And then I built Google Maps on the jump.ca website before Google Maps started. So I was really getting my, it was totally off the wall project, and it was like but it was, I had the freedom to figure out how I'm going to build this thing. They didn't know how they were going to build it. They just said, "Here's what we need," and I was like, "Okay, I'll figure it out." So, and that was kind of, ever since then, it was kind of built on top of that. Well, it's like, well, now we need like an intranet so that all our customers can like communicate with each other. Like a company can have this internal, like, how do they send out announcements to all their employees and stuff? It's like, hey, we need that. So I was like, okay, I'll build it. So I started building this web portal intranet thing called Intra IQ back then. And it's like, they don't know how to do it. So I just figure it out. So I go in there, and as long as I'm making progress and whatever, it's like, and I show off my progress, then it's like, okay, keep going. It looks like it's going the right direction. And then it turned into building mobile apps for BlackBerry, where it's like, okay, well, we want to expose some of this data to some of our customers so that people can check their sales stats and stuff on their BlackBerry. That was back before mobile phones like had like, it was like the text scroll wheel thing and everything. It was really ugly, but we were able to charge like $7 a month for each user of that product back when it first came out, and we got lots of signups on the first day. So I mean, like those kind of things, nobody knew how to do any of this stuff, and I wasn't afraid to try and figure it out. So I think that's how it kind of, and it just every project since then is kind of built on that same idea where it's like, okay, well, we kind of need something that does this, so I'll figure it out. And then Ready was a bit different, where it's like I found the problem in that I wanted to go eat out when I had a kid, and I couldn't enjoy a meal out because I needed to pay right away, and the servers never came with the machine. So I was like, it was just a horrible experience. I was like, I got to figure that out, and so I just figured that out myself for quite a while, and then it turned out that IQ thought it was a good idea too eventually, and they were like, okay, let's do this. It makes a lot of sense. So that's how Ready came. So it was a little bit different of a process for Ready, but for all the other stuff I've worked on throughout my time at IQ, it's been always been like, okay, here's a problem, and then somebody's got to come up with a solution, and it like, if you think too much about it or are scared of it, somebody else is going to do it, or nobody will do it. And so I just took the position pretty much all the time. I was just like, let's do it, and then figure it out. Ask questions later. So it's like, yeah, do it. And I think your famous saying, and I always remember it, is do it until someone tells you to stop. So, or whatever it is. You have some kind of saying like that. It's like, you know, apologize later or whatever.
Yeah,
That's basically how I live my life as well.
it's certainly not my quote. I probably something like ask for forgiveness, not permission, but
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
certainly not mine.
Yeah.
Those are great stories, Garett. Uh, um, are you a unique uh, role in IQ metrics, or should we all be embodying more of don't be afraid? Should we all be?
Everybody should do that. Like, you shouldn't have to wait for someone to come up with an idea for you to actually, like, if you believe in something, do it. Don't be afraid to do it. And you know, obviously, like, there's work that needs to get done that isn't fun. Um, and I have those tasks still to this day. But when you have an idea, don't let it go, and don't be afraid to do it. That would be my message to everybody. It's you know, only good things can come from that, as long as you're not afraid of doing the wrong thing, because everybody does the wrong thing once in a while. Like, many of the things that I've worked on have ended in failure, and I'm not afraid of that. It's like you learn something from it every single time, but you'll never have huge successes either unless you try new things. So you can't be afraid to try those new things.
Garett, this is fantastic perspective, and these are stories I didn't know. I feel so lucky to get to hear about you addressing coverage maps in such a simple way and stuff. So I want to thank you for your time.
I got to tell you one of my failures.
Okay.
Hold on. So
Share us a failure
it's from the
to
early
close
days.
this out.
It's from the early days, and this is a fun one. Well, it wasn't fun at the time, but I was kind of doing the jump.ca website. Literally, this is the second week after I started scanning maps in and stuff. I realized that all the edits to the jump.ca website were happening real time, just using live editing of like the live files on the website. It's like there is no separation. You make a change, you hit save, it's on the website. There's like no GitHub, there's no source control, nothing like that. So I was like, okay, well, that is a bad idea. So I have a good idea. I'm going to take this and I'm going to edit it locally, and then I'll upload my changes after I've made sure everything looks good. So that was an example of where I had an idea and I'm just going to do it. I didn't ask for any permission. But the problem was I copied the files from the FTP server and I pasted them onto my computer. And then as that was copying and pasting, I hear chatter around the office. People are like, what's going on with the jump.ca website? It's like, oh, like some of the images are gone, or like the formatting is bad. And it's like, oh, the files are disappearing off the website. I accidentally cut and paste instead of copy and paste. So all these files were slowly deleting off of the website, and things were just breaking. And then I realized what was happening. And then after everything was gone and it was just a blank page, I started pasting stuff back in, and then I could hear people saying, "Okay, okay, it's starting to come back." It's like, oh, the main page is back up. It's like, oh, the images are starting to come back, and it's like, it took 3 years before I told anybody that story. Nobody knew what happened that day, but it was me making a humongous mistake in deleting jump.ca website and then recovering it. So that was a good time. The new guy.
That that was worth hearing about that one. That was very good. Well, thank you. Thanks for going without fear, deleting that website. It's served us well.
Yeah,
So that's
try
very
not to
good.
delete that anything important. That's all.